All right, welcome to tonight's webinar. It's called Grinding is Not the Answer. You can coach and have a life. This should be an interesting talk tonight. A lot of controversy, and talking to other coaches throughout the last several weeks about some of the things that we'll talk about tonight, but really look forward to it. As we get into it, you can ask questions at any time. If you'll just head over to Twitter and tweet at Coach Thad Wells. You can post whatever questions you have. We'll try to get to those towards the end. I already have a lot of questions that people have typed in tonight. So excited for the end of this webinar when we get to the questions, which is really, one of the better parts about a webinar, because it's things that you guys are thinking about, not necessarily what we're thinking about as we put these things together. So we'll get right into it. And this is a really important webinar to me. This is probably the thing that matters most to me in doing these webinars. Is the topic tonight. The last webinar we did was about creating a 12-month program, just because everybody, or a lot of coaches are getting to that point where they're trying to look at the off season. But this one is really kind of the main reason that I'm doing these, and that Coach Drive exists, and we'll get right into it. So first, what I'm going to talk about is something that I talk about with all of our players and coaches at the beginning of the last few seasons now. And you see the hourglass. The first thing I'll talk to them, and I'll say it to you, is basically our time is running out. It's point blank. We know that there's one guarantee in our time, and that is our time will come to an end. So how full is that hourglass? We have no idea. We don't get to look at this and see how much sand we have left in our time, but there's no doubt that our time is running out. And very few people will think about this, but we challenge our kids. I challenge my students in the classroom. I challenge our players to think about this, because if you're willing to think about this and ask these questions that we'll ask tonight, I think you'll be better prepared to align your values and align your life with the time that you have left. So the next thing I show them is this timeline. And the next few slides will show how that red line progresses. But we talked to them about, and I'll just draw this up on a whiteboard, and I'll go up there and say, hey, this is when you were born. This red line represents today, and the end mark represents the end time. And there's a question mark there, which basically stands for the fact that we have no idea when that could be. This end, and I'm not sure if my mouse is showing up, but at the end here, that could be a lot closer than what we think, depending on our health, depending on how old we are, depending on things we have no control over. So the next thing I do is I go through here and I'll show them how this red line gets closer and closer and closer till one day the end has come, and we're going to be faced with the, if we know it's coming, or we're aware of it, we're going to be faced with a lot of questions. And I think if people actually take the time to ask those questions now, they'll be a lot happier and more fulfilled and serve their purpose in this world if they'll ask those questions today and not wait until it's too late. So then I'll ask our players, and I'm going to ask you tonight, is what should you be doing with your time? It's one of the most valuable resources we have. It's limited. We have very little control. We have some control. Maybe it's our health, or exercising, or doing the right things, but it's something we don't have the full control over, and it's one of our most important resources. So what should you be doing with your time? And I say to our players, and again saying to you, it's what you choose to do with your time that separates you from everyone else. It's those daily decisions that you decide to do with your time that's going to make a difference. But when your time is coming to an end, it's your choices. You can choose to do this, you can choose to do that, and it's your choice. And again, I said this on the last webinar, but I throw this in here a lot, and will continue to, because I want you guys to understand that by no means am I saying that what is in this, or what we believe, or what we do in our program is necessarily the way to get it done, that it's the only way to do things. But I just want to say that I'm really passionate about this, and believe in it, and believe that this next slide is pretty bold statement, but But I do want to say that we make no claim to saying that this is the best way, the right way. We're just trying to share other ideas and other ways of going about coaching in this profession. So as we get into it, this next slide is really a statement for myself and really for Coach Drive, but I really believe this, and I hope to shed a little light into that. And that's, we have a problem. And I'm talking about coaches. We have a problem. And that problem, and I'll say the majority, because I don't want to say that that's all of us, because there's a lot of coaches that are starting to figure this out or have figured this out in their life. But I firmly believe that it's the majority of us have lost our balance. And there's no doubt that in my life, I've lost my balance as a coach, and that my focus has been on this game and on coaching more so than other priorities in my life and other values that I have. And for anybody to argue this is, again, we had that disclaimer, but it would be a tough argument to say that there's not a problem in coaching when, I coach at the high school level, but we're in a college town. So we have players that have coaches as parents. We have a lot of that in our community, and it's firsthand experience and seeing kids that never, ever see their parents, that are that go weeks at a time without seeing them, that have dinner with them maybe once a week, if that. And to say that that's not a problem is, to me, is just denial. And we're supposed to be building the next future of people, the next future leaders of this world, and the next people that are going to change hopefully this place for the better. And yet we're sending them the message that family and priorities outside of work do not matter. Because at the end of the day, if we're getting paid to coach at all, and even if you're not, even if it's you're volunteering, or if it's youth or whatever it is, it's still a job. It's a type of job. It may be a hobby to us and we love it, but we're telling our players and our family that work is more important than the other values in our life. And that's something hard to swallow. And it's been something hard for me over the last couple of years, but I feel much better that I can admit to this and that I can look at things with this perspective. And by no means have I got this figured out, and that I'm saying we are balanced now in our program or our coaches. It's tough. It's a daily battle. And the reason for this is because of our love for coaching. Our love for coaching has put blinders over our eyes. And I believe this. It's we love coaching so much that we're willing to give up so much in life, that we're willing to basically a lot of us not even have a life outside of coaching. A lot of people are willing to not even start a family because of their love for coaching. I'm not saying that's bad at all. That's everybody's value, or everybody has their own values. But we love it so much. It's almost insane to think about anybody else that would say, yes, I'll give 60 to 80 to even 100 hours a week of my life for something, for a job or a hobby or anything. And yet it happens over and over and over. And it's because we love it, and which is a great thing. And obviously we're willing to put the hours into it and work, but are we aligning our time that we choose to spend in our life with the values that we have? So as we get into this is a quote, and I did a Glazier clinic. So if you saw that, some of this will repeat a little bit, but there's a lot of new things as well. But one of the things I talked about was this quote by Benjamin Franklin: "Drive thy business, or it will drive thee." And it's essentially saying, if we're not careful, and it is specifically talking about business, but that could be anything in life. If we're not careful, we can become consumed by our business, by our jobs, by coaching, by whatever it is, our hobbies. It can consume us to an unhealthy balance in life. So I kind of mentioned this a few minutes ago, but one of the greatest activities you can do, period, and something that I highly encourage you to do with your players and your coaching staff, and something we've done with our players, is to reflect on the end of life, to put yourself in your shoes, to when you are approaching the end of your life. Maybe one great activity is simply writing your eulogy. It sounds morbid. It may sound awkward, but sit there and take the time to write what you would hope somebody would say at your eulogy. And this is something I've done, and it's something I do periodically to see how I'm living towards this, but it is an amazing activity, and kind of going following along this. There's a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. So wouldn't it be nice to know what at the end of our life, what we regretted and what we enjoyed out of life? And this book really, it's without getting into too much detail, really looks at the life of a lot of people that were on their deathbed, that were knew they were going to die soon. And you see on the right the 5 top regrets. So number 1, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. And that is to me anyways, that is something very, very deep. How many of us grow up with expectations, starting with our parents, and then expectations from now as coaches, from the community, from administration, from just society in general. Yet we have all these ideas, yet we're not willing to live the life that we believe is true for what we value. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And so this is basically talking exactly what we're discussing in this webinar. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. So number 3, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And number 5, I wish I had left or let myself be happier. Great book. It's a great activity, but continuing this discussion of reflecting and regret, the next quote you'll see, I want you to really think about this and say it to yourself. I'll read it, give you a second to, I'll read it out loud, then I'll give you a second to read it for yourself. I only have one regret, that I would have spent more time watching film, diagramming plays, sitting in meetings, instead of being with my family. I had a friend send this to me just this week. They actually tweeted it to us, so you may have seen that on our Twitter, but there's not a greater quote right here than her reading this. And if you can read this and say that you agree with that, then I guess this webinar probably isn't for you. But somebody's going to say it or think it right now, but I don't have a family. I don't want a family. I'm never going to have a family. That's not, I coach because the players are my family. I get that. I really do. And when I first got into coaching, I was not married. I didn't have kids. And you obviously can rationalize the consumption and or being consumed by the job, by what you love. But know this, very few staffs in this country are made up of nothing but coaches without families. There's usually at least somebody on your staff that has a family. So by denying that person the right to be with their family, you're just as guilty as having a family yourself and not being with them. And then again, this is tough words, but I believe it. And even if you don't plan to have a family, and we're talking about getting married, having kids, but still thinking about your own family, whether it's your parents or siblings, close friends, but if you don't plan to have a family, don't have one now, and would rather grind, and that's what you enjoy, then grind on your own time and do what you like, but don't create a system or a program that takes away time from everyone else if that's what they choose to value. All right, so the word grinding, it's been something that I've heard over and over and over, especially lately as we have recruiters come into our school to look at a couple of our kids. We have GAs occasionally and position coaches. And one of the questions I ask them is not the specific question, but I ask them a lot of questions that kind of get to how hard they work and the hours they put in. And I go and meet with staffs and ask them the same thing. And just, they don't know why I'm asking, but it goes back to all the things I'm talking about tonight. But you ask them, and I'll never forget a conversation I had about 2 to 3 weeks ago with a coach that I was kind of talking about these things, and I could tell he didn't believe in what I said, and he was basically arguing the fact that you have to grind in order to be good. It was like a badge of honor for him. It was a GA, and he said that he slept at the office every night during the season this year, and he was bragging about it and thought that that's what needed to be done to be successful, and said it was a weeding out process to see who can make it and that he didn't think any of the other GAs on staff would be back next season, and really was proud of that fact. And it's sad because I think this is probably the this is not the exception in coaching at the collegiate level, and it's sad to me because we're basically saying that in order to be a coach, you must give up everything else in your life. That there should be no other priorities. That you can't think about other things, and you certainly can't have a family and start in college and be a GA. I mean, how many times do you hear that? If you haven't got into college and you've already have a family, you might as well not even try because you're not going to see them because of the grinding that's going to take place. And I get it. Like, I'm not saying the word, I understand grinding. Like, there are times you have to work and you're going to work hard. I understand that. But the way it's talked about in coaching, and especially the college ranks, is that grinding is this thing that's all consuming. And that if you're not doing what's right. It's the right thing to do to build a program. And if you want to be successful, you better grind. And we'll give you time off at the end of the season, and you can have those couple weeks or that month off for your family. But the other 11 months, you better be grinding in order to be successful. And again, I know this is not 100% across the board how it is, but I've seen it enough to know that it is the majority. So we have to ask the question, why is it like this? Why has it gone to this way? Or why did it start this way, and why has it never changed? And so I believe one of the biggest reasons is this. The win now or else mentality has created unbelievable pressure and fear. Coaches are afraid to do anything other than what is being done already. This is certainly true the higher you go in terms of the win now or else mentality from fans, from administration, from boosters, but it goes all the way down to as low ranks as you can think about in sports. If you're not winning, I don't care even if it's at the youth level, you're going to have parents on you and telling you you're doing it wrong and you need to, give things up. And I mean, we all can hear it on the sidelines listening to the parents tell us how it is. But, again, as you go up the higher ranks, you have a tremendous amount of stress. It's basically if you're not winning right now, year one, in a lot of cases, you're going to be on the hot seat. You may last more than 1 year, but you're on the hot seat immediately. You even start 0-2. In some cases, you're on the hot seat. So this has created just so much pressure. And the reason we are the way we are, the majority, is because of the fear it creates. We're so afraid to go out of the box, to try new things, to live a life, to create a coaching or a program based off of our values. We're so afraid to do that because we're afraid to lose our jobs. But I have to ask the question, is losing our jobs, or keeping our jobs, should I say, is keeping our jobs worth losing so many other things in our life? You have to ask that. Is winning games and building a successful program, doing it the way everybody expects, is it worth everything else you're giving up in your life? And I'm not just talking family. There's other things. But all right. So the way a lot of times it's approached is basically we're trying to squeeze another minute out of life in order to be successful. Where can we find one more minute? There's something we'll joke about. I don't even know this is true, but I've heard it a couple different times. I've joked about this with our other coaches, but just hearing a story about a coach, and again, just not saying names because I don't know if it's true or not, but hearing a very successful coach that basically has his lunch planned out to a T. His secretary gets the exact same thing every day in order for him not to have to think about it, so that he can be more efficient during the day. And I get that, and I'm not saying that's necessarily a negative thing. I'm just saying that's to the point of where we are, that we're trying to squeeze every single, not even minute, we're trying to squeeze every single second out of life in order to be successful. So we're taking away a lot of things in order that we can have one more minute to do one more thing, so to make sure that we've covered everything there possibly is to cover in being a successful coach. To me, and what I believe in, instead, we should be asking, how can we do things differently? How can we be more productive with less time devoted to grinding? To me, it's about productivity, not how much we can do. A good quote for this from Peter Drucker is, efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. So we're trying to figure out what are those things we should be doing with our program. And then we're going to make sure that we're doing them the right way. It's not what all needs to get done. What list everything that under the sun that needs to be done to create a successful program, and we're going to make sure we do every single thing, because if we don't, we're not treating our kids fairly. We're not building the right program. We're not being loyal to our boosters, whatever it may be. That to me is the wrong way to approach this. And if you listen to the last webinar or anything else, you can you see that I'm a big reader, and I'll suggest a lot of books. And maybe you're not a reader and you don't want to, but I'll challenge you through every webinar we discuss on books that can absolutely change your life. The first book that I'm going to talk about is called The E-Myth, and this is the revised edition. It's still a little bit older book, but it's called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And it's talking about, you see that subheading there, why most businesses don't, or small businesses don't work, and what to do about it. So it's a book about small businesses. But it again, you'll hear me discuss a lot of business books. I believe a lot of the answers to building successful sports programs is not necessarily in the sports themselves. Too many people are doing the same thing. Too many people are copying each other. We have to look outside our sport in order to become successful. And business is where a lot of the things we should be looking at are in the business world, because a lot of now it's just as bad or worse in corporate America. But there's a lot of people who are starting to figure things out that we can work efficiently. And this book is one of those things. And this book is essentially discussing why businesses fail. And it's absolutely the exact same reason why coaches fail when they become head coaches. It starts off by discussing 3 things. And this is from the book. I'm not going to talk about everything you see on here, but you're welcome to look at this and read it, or look for it online. You can Google the E-Myth and look at the images, and this will come up. But so it's basically saying there's 3 different types of personalities in a business owner. You could translate that to a head football coach, or even a coordinator at times. So it says you're an entrepreneur, which basically means you're the visionary. You have the thoughts and ideas. You're the innovator. Then you have the manager, who basically takes these ideas and creates systems and organizes and manages people to get those things done. Then you have the technician, or the doer, the person that gets those things done. So let's use an example outside of football or whatever your sport is for a second. If let's say you're a baker and you bake bread, you're a really good baker. You can bake the best bread in your city or your town, but you're tired of making bread for your boss. You want to go out on your own. So you decide to own your own business. You decide to start your own bakery. Well, you start your own business and you start baking the bread, and it's really good bread, but for some reason you're not making any money. And the reason is you've never learned how to become an entrepreneur or a manager. You just know how to bake bread. And so within a year, you may be successful, but over 50% of businesses are failing within the first 3 to 4 years. And it's the majority of businesses have failed now in our society. The majority of small businesses fail within 5 to 10 years. And this is no different than being a coach, a head coach. We start off as position coaches, or even less than that at times, but start off, eventually you become a position coach, and you're the technician, right? You're a technician. You learn your job, your position, and you could become really good at that. And then you decide you want to be a coordinator. And so you start moving up. You may start doing some managing things. So you're learning how to organize the overall schemes and organize the doers, which are your assistant coaches and the players. But then you're tired of working for for your boss, the head coach, or maybe you're not tired. You're just ready to go out on your own. You feel like you're ready to go out on your own. But all you've been is a doer, and you've coordinated a defense or offense. And then you go be a head coach, but you've never had the entrepreneur experience. You've never learned. You've never studied. If you haven't had a head coach that's shown you the way, then once you get that job, and because of your short timeline, you've got a year or less to figure things out. And if you don't find the right mentor, a consultant or whatever it is, if you don't find that right person to help you out, you better just be lucky and good naturally, or you're going to fail and you're going to lose your job. And that's what this book is discussing is basically there's got to be a better way than just relying on luck to move from technician to manager to entrepreneur. And it goes through exactly the steps you would need to think about it. And again, it's talking about a business, but we could apply this to coach. I highly encourage anybody that's either a head coach or thinking about being a head coach to read this book when you're thinking about building your program. And then it goes on to talk about something called the turnkey revolution. Essentially what it's saying is most small businesses fail. However, there's a certain style of business that seems to be very successful. And it's essentially talking about franchises. And that's like your, obviously McDonald's are the big ones, but even when McDonald's wasn't that big, they were extremely successful early on. And the reason was they created systems. And that's the next thing that book will talk about is basically how, and they're talking turnkey is what they mean by systems here. Basically creating systems and processes for everything you do. So it's like you're going to be a head coach. Let's say, if you're talking about McDonald's and a franchise, you're going to be a head coach and you're going to build your program. And when that program is successful, you're going to leave it and go build another program and another program, or you're going to go teach somebody how to build it. In order to do that, you've got to have your systems in place and aligned. And let's say you're going to leave that, but you're going to leave one at a time, and you're going to leave it, but you still want it to be good. But you're going to remove yourself. So you need to leave managers in place, and you got to leave the systems. So that's what you're trying to do. When you're building a program as a head coach, or you're thinking about becoming a head coach, you want to go ahead and have your program built, or your systems built, which is exactly what you have to do if you want to be successful. Then you should think that you're going to take what you do with this first program and you're going to go change 1,000 programs in your life, even though you may never want to do that. That's how you should approach systemizing and putting processes to your program. So another book, and this is one I mentioned in that Glacier webinar, is called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And this is taking the lean production system, which was made famous first by Toyota, and basically how can you build a business? This is talking about a small business or product or whatever it may be. How can you build that with being and still be very successful and efficient? So it's going to talk about a loop in that book, and it's going to basically say to build something. So if we're talking about building a program, then it's going to make sure that you have your measurements or your metrics, and then as you analyze it, you're going to learn about your program. And there's some other things too that you can see even in the gray writing here. I'm not going to get into everything, but it's basically stating that when you create your systems, you need to have a way to measure everything and to learn and to adjust when things don't go right. So another quote here by W. Edward Deming is, if you can't describe what you are doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. If you're just going, by the seat of your pants and you're just doing things as it comes to you, you may be successful here and there, but how are you going to replicate that from year to year, from program to program? Second quote, same guy, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So we all have our opinions. How many coaches do you know, including myself? I do it all the time, and I'm sure you do it, and other coaches that do it, that state that this is how things should be, that this is how they've always been, or this. There's no challenging it. And then if you just simply ask them for some numbers on it, they just be, well, that's just how it is. We all know that. Well, if they don't have numbers, or if you don't have numbers to prove what you believe in or what you think you believe in, then how do you know that that's right? How can you prove that? So as you're building your program or building your systems or even as an assistant, if you're trying to build your process up as a coach, how can you prove what you're doing is the right thing? How can you prove that you're getting better? If you can't measure it, then you have no idea. It's just an opinion you have. All right, so we're going to start talking a little bit about now how do we started off by discussing how we can be more efficient so that we don't give up our lives as coaches. And one of the main things that I'll share with you today is called the Pareto principle. Some people call it the 80-20 principle. And that's basically stating that 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort. And I have, without a doubt, found this to absolutely be true. And definitely with the sport of football that I coach. And that's that 20% of what we do generally produces 80% of the results. So that the other 80% of the things that we do with our time, if we don't think about it, is, I won't say a complete waste, but it's not getting a lot out of your time for 80% of what you're putting in. So the key is, how can we find the 20% of what matters? And it's different. Some things are the same, just as the let's say the laws of your sport, but a lot of it comes down to how you run your program, what you believe in, what do you value. So it's not something we can just sit here and say, here's the 20% that matters for everybody. It's more along the lines of what 20% matters for you. So another quote here is simplicity boils down to 2 steps. Identify the essential, eliminate the rest. And simplicity is something you absolutely have to think about along with the 80-20% rule. Simplicity boils down to 2 steps. Identify the essential, eliminate the rest. You have to identify that 20% that matters and get rid of everything else. Get really, really good at that 20% and then get rid of the things that don't matter. Why be efficient at everything? Why try to have the perfect processes and systems for everything? That's what coaches at the highest level, that's what they're doing. They're trying to create systems for everything, to be good at everything. And we know that that's just not possible. You have to find out what you can be good at, what you have the skill to be good at, what your people can be good at, and then just get rid of everything else. There are certain things you have to keep around just because, again, it's absolutely necessary, but we believe too many things are necessary as coaches. All right, so we're going to get into the 3 steps to getting control. So these are 3 things that I think that we should all be looking at doing. These are 3 things that aren't very necessarily, once you even look at these, they're not that easy to do all the time or to stick with, and I definitely have trouble, but it's something you should constantly be looking to do. So number 1, study productivity. And there may be some things in your sport and some people you can find, but like I said, the majority are not doing this. So the trick, if you're going to look in your sport, you've got to find somebody that's actually doing these things and not, again, working their life away. So who can you find that you can learn from? Basically finding a mentor. Second, I'll say is get out of your sport. Quit looking at your sport for the answers, because generally I've not found them there. There's a lot of more books on businesses and other things that will help you find how to be productive. And by productive, we don't just simply mean getting everything done. We mean getting the right things done efficiently. Number 2, find out what matters. You have to find out what matters to you. And we talked about this in the last webinar. The book was called The One Thing by Gary Keller. But you have to find out what matters. What is it? What matters to your program? What's unique to you? It's just like a recruiter that let's say a coach that is recruiting in Texas versus a coach that's recruiting in Minnesota. You can't approach it the same way. You got to find out what's unique to yourself. You got to approach recruiting in your own way. And we're all trying to find what is our niche and what can we be good at. And you got to find those things in order to gain control back of your life as a coach. And not just as a head coach, as a position coach. I keep saying that, but it's true. And number 3, create systems and processes. That's basically what we just discussed with the E-Myth, with the lean startup, and then the One Thing. Use those if you're having questions, and you guys can email me and we can discuss things. But even more so, and getting into that is read those books, find other people that discuss these things, systems and processes. There's a lot of other great books out there, and I'm definitely willing to share anything with you guys. But these are the 3 things we should start to get into, and it's something you'll be constant. It's not like you ever arrive with this. Once you stop thinking about it is when you start losing your time again. And I'll say this, your systems have to match your values. We discussed a little bit in the last webinar and how important values are, and that's something we have in our Win Your Way program. But it's you're trying to find your values. What matters to you? If you don't know what matters to you, how can you, once you do have the free time, what are you going to do with that time? If we're not saying you should just create free time just to be lazy and to do nothing and sit around, which even that's important to just to keep sanity to yourself at times. But you got to find out why you're even doing this. There's a lot of people that think it's okay. Well, heck, the majority of the reason why people think it's okay to grind away your life is because they've never looked at their values. They place coaching above everything else, and it is above a lot of things. It's one of the most noble things we can do as a profession. But there are more things to life. So next, we're going to discuss some common problems that I hear from other coaches. Even a couple of these things were mentioned today on Twitter, but let's get into these, and we're almost finished before we get some questions. But here we go. Your players need more from you, and this is something that I completely understand. And we're all in different situations. Some of us coach in places where free and reduced lunch is 100%. Some places where it's not. But I'll argue, a lot of coaches will say, if they're in a situation where their kids, are in a place where, it's reduced lunch for everybody, they need them more than the other coach. I just don't believe that. There's even when you're in a school, and like we're in a school that free and reduced lunch isn't as big a part of it. But you better, and I've been in both situations, you better believe players at all levels need our help. If it's not money, if it's not support like that financially, it's the other side of things. And I know a lot of people will think that that's lucky you, tough problem to deal with. But when you're dealing with players that can't emotionally keep themselves together and they can't think for themselves, and they're putting in the pressure of being successful from home, it's just the same reality. There's still issues the kids have, but what we're saying is that coaches believe their players need them, and it's absolutely true, they do. But again, are you willing? Whether you have a family or you coach with people that have a family, are you willing to give up the needs of your family in order to give everything away to the players? There's got to be a balance. We're not saying one way is right or wrong to a certain degree. We're saying there has to be some kind of balance. And what we see and what's been in my experience for my life personally, that we tend to balance too heavy and away from our own values in life and towards our jobs as coaches. A lot of this is something that came up on Twitter, but this is something I was already going to discuss. You don't have enough help. So many coaches, especially head coaches, will say that they don't have the right staff to help them with what needs to get done. And I get this. My first head job was at a school with 3 coaches, and it was, you were coordinating everything. You had all your fundraising and grades and all of it. You had to do it all, painting the lines, mowing the field. I get it. And it's not easy. I'm not saying that there's a 100% foolproof way to do that. But if you use this as an excuse, then that's the way it's always going to be. If you can't say that you have a certain problem, or you're saying that the problem isn't you, it's the help you have, then that's fine. But that's just the way it's always going to be. If you don't try to think outside the box on how you can get more help, or how you can educate the help you've got, or how you can create better systems to use the help you have, or how you can use your players to delegate some of the problem or some of the things you have to do. If you don't do those things, then I know it's harsh, but that's on you. And when you're 80 and you're the person reflecting back on your life, then it's going to be something you wish you would have thought a lot more about. And I'm not speaking from experience, so I know I'm risking sounding like somebody that thinks they know everything, but it's really just a belief and reading books that we discussed earlier, and looking at what issues people have at the end of life, and really just believe that that's just the way it is. So number 3, you don't trust others. This is definitely a problem among coaches, and again, I've had this trouble this problem. Basically, you have a lot of help, but you know how to do it. You do it better than everybody else, and you just don't trust your people to do it right. And again, I just have to say, because this was me, and I hope that I'm getting better at this, but I just have to tell you that that's on you. That's your fault for not trusting others. That's your fault for not putting people in the right place to trust them. That's your fault for not educating your coaches good enough to put them in the right position to give them jobs. It's your fault for not creating the right systems. And maybe there's people logging off now, getting mad at me, but again, I'm here to help people that believe in this and want to have their life in a way that they can not only be great coaches and build good programs and change people's lives and influence their players, but also do the right things at home and in other areas of life. Number 4, you're afraid to delegate. Maybe you're not afraid to delegate because that kind of goes with trust. Maybe you just don't understand how to delegate, or you just haven't done it. And up until this past season, I've definitely not been a great delegator. And this season, I've done it a little bit better, and I hope to do it a little bit more next year. But there's so many jobs that have to get done in a season, from the top coaching ranks to the bottom. If you try to do it all yourself, again, that goes back to not getting enough help, trusting other people. But you have to learn how to delegate. It's one of the main things you have to do in order to get time back. And it may not even be staff. It may be, let's say, your spouse. You could delegate some things to get some help there. I don't know the right answer. I'm not saying I have the right answer, but I know the right answer is not just doing it the way that's always been done, just because you think or we think as a coaching society that that's the right way to do it. And it's always been done that way. Number 5, when I am home, all I can think about is coaching. And there's not a doubt in my mind that we all experience this, because I do. And I've talked to a lot of coaches that think the same thing. Even when we do create the time and we are at home with our family, we still can't help but think about our program. And I certainly do not have the best answer for you here, but I know that we have to work hard. It's a daily grind, if you want to say it. It's a daily grind to put things out of our mind, to think about the needs of our family instead of the needs of everything else going on at the office. It's tough. I now get up really early in the morning in order that I can devote some time every day to things outside of my family. That way, when my kids are up or wife's awake or whatever it may be, I'm able to devote that time. But there's still it's a constant battle. It's one thing another book I should have put up here. Think about it now. The Power of Now. The book is called The Power of Now. It's out there. It's different, but it basically discussed the ability to live in the moment, to clear your mind, to think outside the box. And this is why so many successful people today are starting to use more and more meditation. I mean, it's been around for thousands of years, but and meditation is something, basically, a lot of people think it's, especially coaches, a lot of them think it's something that nobody would. I don't hear many coaches meditating, I'll say that, but it's something I try to do. And it's really all it is at the end of the day, it's trying to get you to control your mind and your thoughts. It's trying to be, keep a level head during the heat of a game when you're trying to make decisions. It's focusing on the things in the moment, such as your family. But I understand that's hard. And it's something that I fight every single day, out of season, in season, it doesn't matter. All right, so I'm going to go through a few examples of what we do in our program. And if you don't coach at our level, I still think these are just things that get you thinking. But we'll talk. We do a lot of things different. If you talk to me or you get to know me, I'm just a different guy. And it's just I don't know. It's the way I've always been. And here are just a few of the things that we do. And I'm sure a lot of people do these things too, but just want to share them. So number one, we're a high school staff, and we do not meet on the weekends. We've designed ways to eliminate that. I just felt that now our motto for our program as a whole is family. It's forget about me, I love you. I know a lot of you guys have seen that, but we do believe in family. We believe in growing our players to be devoted to their family later in life. But what does it say to our players if we don't even spend time with our families, especially on the weekend? So we have developed our systems, and everything has to work together. It's not just like, hey, we're going to do things like everybody else, but we're not going to meet on the weekend. It doesn't work like that. So everything we do kind of ties into each other. You got to make sure your systems and processes work, but we don't meet on the weekends. Instead, we do use technology to do a lot of things. But even at that, even though we do work on the weekends with technology at times, and I do it in the mornings before anybody gets up, but we actually just don't do that much compared to a lot of programs. I've been with programs that meet for hours and hours and hours on the weekend. I get it. I understand the trouble. So many people right now are saying, how in the world can you get things done with not meeting on the weekend? I get that. I also know other staffs other than ours that don't meet on the weekend, so I know it's being done. And I know you can be successful doing it, but you just have to have the right systems. We use Google Drive for a lot of things. We make sure our film breakdown is done in the right way. We make sure our schemes match up with this. We make sure our practice schedule throughout the week matches up with this. But we are not going to meet on the weekends, and I can never see myself ever going back. And if you talk to the coaches on our staff, I can guarantee you they'd have a hard time ever going to another program that meets on the weekends. Once you start that, there's no way you can go back to not seeing your family as much as you get to in doing this and building your program this way. Number two, we don't practice on Mondays. So instead, our players come in as soon as school's are over. And we do what we call fundamentals of life. Some of you have heard me talk about this before, but we do fundamentals of life, which is a program that we've designed based off of what we think our kids are missing in life, things they don't get at home, things they don't get in school, on how to be successful. A lot of what we're talking about right now is what we talk with what we're talking about in this webinar. We talk exactly about these things with our players on how to create a life based off our values and not to grind away to where to the point when we're old that we have regrets. So we share these exact things with our players, but we don't practice on Mondays. We do that first. And then we watch a few minutes of film. It's really not much. Hardly ever does it, 30 minutes, I'd say, is the average for our film time with our players. That includes Friday night film. That includes opponent film. And then our players leave and go home. And then the staff stays. And this is the only time we meet as a staff. We don't meet after practice. We don't meet before school. We don't meet any of those times. We meet for literally about 30 minutes, sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more. But we meet for about 30 more minutes as a staff. And all we're doing is really just getting face to face to basically say, are you comfortable with what we said on over the weekend in our Google Drive stuff? Are we good on everything? Does everything check out? We're not scheming during this time. We're not creating a game plan. We're just checking ourselves from how we talk to each other on the weekends. And again, everything's got to align for this to work. And something I didn't put down, the way we can get rid of Monday's practices is we also don't do the traditional walkthroughs on Thursday. We kind of got rid of a lot of that. And so we just felt like dying down on the day before the game just doesn't really fit us. So we got rid of that, and that allowed us to do this on Mondays instead. Another benefit from this is, again, knock on wood, it's these last couple years that we've been doing this has been the healthiest teams that I've ever had when it comes to playoffs. The last 2 years, we have had one player who has not been prepared for playoffs. And that's kind of crazy when you think about how many injuries happen in a season. And that might just be luck, but we think it has a little bit to do with how much time off our players get. They get 3 full days without, getting out there on the field and running around. All right, so number 3, we don't pay attention to 99% of tendencies. We really don't. When you go to breaking down film, we turn our film into huddle assist, and I know that's a money thing for some people. Basically, if you don't know what huddle assist is, or they enter a lot of the stats for you or the tendencies. But we make sure we fundraise in order to have things like this, so that, again, it's either spend all your time during season or spend a little bit of time outside of season raising a little bit of extra money so that you can do these type of things. But anyways, we do that. But if there's not something that says that they do, let's say something 80% or more, then we're not really looking at it. We're not that concerned what you do on 3rd and 1. And I know that sounds absolutely insane to most people. But we know how we play different formations and what we do on our offenses and within our offense, and we're not going to sit here and try to create the perfect scheme for everything. We're going to find, what is your best stuff? What's the absolute best thing you do? We're going to, make sure we can take that away, and then we're not going to. We'll talk about this a little bit more in a second because we had a question about this, but we don't pay attention to. We pay attention to very, very few tendencies. Number 4, we don't game plan, and this is a little crazy to a lot of people. Our defense, and I say game plan with quotes there to say in a traditional way. Of course, we do a little bit of game planning, but in what I've been in on staffs in the past, we create our schemes, and this is important. You can't just approach schemes in the same way and just not game plan, right? It won't work. We build our schemes to match how we game plan. And on offense, that basically means we don't game. We really don't game plan on offense. We watch what they do and we get a general idea, but there's been too many times that we've put hours into a game plan to just have them do something else, to do something different when we get out there on the field, and you've literally wasted an entire week of your life trying to create the right game plan. You cannot prepare for everything a team can do. Especially at our level, we see so many flavors of the week that it made no sense. So our goal is to become the best in-game adjustment team we can be, and we're going to have the best communication system we can have in order to get plays in order for players to talk to us so that we don't have to have the best game plan. We can adjust in the middle of the game, and we're constantly trying to get better at that. We have a long ways to go. There's already things this offseason I've been looking at least, and we have to get better in this aspect, because this is really the kind of the heart and soul of how we execute on the field. But defense is similar, and we'll talk about that again here in a couple minutes with some questions. Next example, we lift for less than 30 minutes. So every lifting session we have, they never go over 30 minutes. A lot of cases are about 20 minutes, but this goes back to that Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. We just find that too many coaches or too many programs put in way too much time in the weight room. And well, we find a lot that don't even, it's either they put no time at all or they put in too much. There's never the right balance in there, right? It's they try to hit every single muscle group with every single lift and every form of auxiliary and every stretch in the world and every speed drill and whatever it may be. We're on the quest to find the 20% of what matters. We want full body workouts. We want things that make our players reach their 80% level, but we're not going to spend all that time needed to get to that extra 20%. And that's crazy for a lot of people, I'm sure, to listen to, but we just feel that is not the best use of our time. We have a lot of other things we could be doing, including going home to our families, and this is something I should have talked about later, but it's for our players too. Why should we be keeping our players for this? Why this is something I've thought about here lately. We give up, a lot of parents think that they give up their kids when they turn 18 and go off to college. That's not true. If we give up our kids when they turn 5 years old and they start elementary school and they start afternoon or after school sports or programs, they go to school, they leave at 7:30, get there at 8, whatever it may be for your school. But they go there, they stay there till 3, they start practice. It goes till 5 or so. The kids get home at 6. Let's say if they're young, their bedtime's 8 to 9. Well, that means you've spent about an hour to 2 hours with your kids. And that's it. And to me, that's a whole nother issue with our systems outside of sports. But how can we justify keeping our players for so much time? And a lot of coaches now are boasting about the fact that they get their players out the field and in an hour and a half practice. But what about all the extra stuff? What about the lifting? What about the meetings? Everything else that goes into it. It's just because you're not on the field doesn't mean that you're getting your players home to see their families. So it's you can tell I'm pretty passionate about this and believe that we're setting the wrong message if we're not doing these things. And so, lifting, the reason I hit this note is lifting is a part of that. We pare down on this so we can get our players home. And, in the off season, we do, in terms of out of school, we only meet 3 days a week. We're out of there in less than 2 hours, during the summer. And it's just the same thing. We're not going to take up our kids' summer so that they can get better at a sport. There's too much else to life. Number 6, we do nothing after school during the off season. So as soon as the season's over, there's nothing our kids stay for when school gets out. I open the weight room before school, and I know this is an issue for coaches that are in places where their players can't get there. But we have developed the in-schools lifting as well. So we do have lifting in the school. And the kids that don't have that come before school, and I drive myself kids to school when needed to get them there. And other coaches do the same thing. And if you don't, and I know coaches right now are saying, and I get it, I do. I know there's coaches right now saying, well, we don't have the lifting in class and we're never going to get it. Well, yes, if you say that, that's the way it's going to be. If you don't, they'll fight to get it and think outside the box and go talk to coaches who have done it themselves, then yeah, that's the way it's going to be. You won't have it. But I encourage you to try to go outside the box and look at those things. But all right, so just a couple more things before we get to some of the questions. These are things that you're probably thinking or that I get from a lot of other coaches when I talk about these things. First one is, do you guys even win? Can you guys do these things and be successful? Because it sounds like you're not doing a lot. Well, I'm not saying that we're successful because of this or whatever, and we certainly have good athletes, but if you claim you win a lot of games without athletes and because you don't have good players, then that's on you. In order to be highly successful, you absolutely do have to have players. It's just a combination, right? Good coaching, good players, but more so good players. But yeah, we've been successful over the last couple of years. The school that I'm at, this is the third season. They won a state championship about 30 years ago before we got here, and they hadn't won a playoff game in about a decade. Great program in terms of just building good men. They've always been about that, but it's just been a while for success. And just here lately, we last season or first season there, we went 6-4, got to the playoffs, lost in the first round. Last year, we actually won the state title. We started off 2-4. Things weren't doing too good. We changed a lot of things up and somehow managed to get into the playoffs and just got on a roll. We changed a lot of things. A lot of things is what we're talking about today. We actually cut back and started really buying into these things, and that's what led to us going undefeated from then on and winning our state title. And this season, we finished the regular season 9-1, won our first 2 playoff games, and lost the last game 33, or the third game of playoffs 33-32. And that team went on to win the state title. So it was a it was a tough loss for us, but yeah, we're winning, and I'm not saying it's because of this. We obviously have really good players, or else we wouldn't be doing the things that we're doing. So I'm never going to say that that's what I do results in that. But second thing, you guys are just lazy. I get a lot of coaches that may not say this to my face, but they definitely look at me like that. They think that we just either we don't enjoy coaching, or that we're just lazy and we don't want to do the work that it takes to be successful. And that's fine if people think that, and I'm sure a lot of people listen to this or listen to this in the future will think that, but it has nothing to do with that. I care more about the development of my 2 boys at home, and the time that I need to be spending with my wife, and the time that my coaches need to be spending with their kids, and the time that our players should be spending with their families later on in life. The time that our players should be spending with their families right now before they leave the house. That's what I care about. It has nothing to do with laziness, because we work hard. We work extremely hard. We just work in a completely different manner than what we're seeing out there. What about outside perception? This is something I got on Twitter earlier today, and I get this from other coaches as well, and I get it. This goes back to that fear. What's going to happen when we're doing these things and our parents are complaining because the team down the road is doing this, and this, and our administration starts complaining. And I get it. If you don't win and you're doing these things, you're risking, not being there. But since Wind is doing all those things, when is that proven to keep people in their jobs? The majority don't make it. That's just point blank, just like the majority of small businesses don't make it. And it's not because they're not working hard enough. It's because they're doing the wrong things. So we don't care about what the other people say. We don't look at those things. And it's just, I've never been a person that's really cared. And I get that. And you can tell by tonight, that's kind of the demeanor of this webinar is a lot of people may not agree with everything, but I believe in what we're doing and in this message. And I just, I just can't live. I couldn't live with myself and giving up all these things that I've discussed in order just to build a successful program that wins games. No matter what, we're going to be teaching our players on how to be successful in life. That's number one in our program. Yes, we want to win so that we can keep our job and keep teaching kids. But if it means giving up everything else in life, it's just not worth it. So to finish up, I may start doing this a little bit more, but these are the books we discussed, just so you have them in one place so that you can look these up, get them on Amazon, get an iBook, whatever it is. But one last book I wanted to mention, and I didn't get this in here and anywhere else, but the book's called Good to Great by Jim Collins, and he's got several books like this. They're long books, so they're hard to read. It's a great off-season book to read, but it's talking about the same things. If you're trying to build a program and find good systems and find what matters, this book is definitely a good one, along with all the other ones that he has written. And it's just all about how good businesses get that way. And then he's got other books that talk about how they stay that way and what happens and how businesses fail as well. They're all really good. So I'm going to start getting into the questions for tonight. All right, so I'm just going to start reading these. There's some long ones here. The first one is I'm reading your webinar, or I'm on the webinar right now. Let's see. I'm an assistant coach at the high school level, varsity. My wife and I found out just a week after the season ended that she is pregnant, and the due date is late July, early August. My wife is aware that I am very passionate about coaching. I work full time outside of it, and we both agreed to discuss the issue of me coaching next year at some point. I would like to continue coaching, but I also do not want to abandon my responsibilities as a father to be. What are some creative ideas to make both work? Should I suggest to the head coach that maybe this year I can be more behind the scenes with the film work ground and things that can do from home? Or should I suggest an idea that I only come in a couple days per week instead of every day? So this is an absolute beautiful question. And this is the reason we're doing this tonight. And this is probably why I got to where I am as a coach. As you know, my oldest son is about to be 3 in a month. Our youngest son is about to be 1 in a couple of months. We absolutely plan to have more kids, Lord willing. But that exact question is why I'm having this tonight. The fact that coaches should have to give up their desire to be a coach because coaching doesn't work with their values. And that's the issue. There's so many coaches getting out of coaching that have the good values. If we continue down this road, all that's going to be left are coaches that don't have family values. And it's going to be, we're going to be teaching, we have such a good platform to teach kids about life. And if we get rid of all the coaches that care about family values, then we're going to be missing the boat on what we can do. But in terms of what we can do or what you can do now as an assistant, I get it. And this was a question, I'll cover this question too, because this was another question I was going to talk about. And that question was, as an assistant, what can I do? Because if the head coach doesn't go along with these things, what are things that I can do? Well, first, you can try to be more efficient in what you have to do with what the coach asks you. That's one thing. And so you can study productivity, read the books that I've suggested, just read other books that are on productivity. That's to begin with, but I still get it. If the coach demands that you're there for hours on hours, well, then there's only 2 things you can do. One, you can basically approach your coach and try to get things changed. But if all you do is go approach your coach and suggest to get things changed, more than likely that's not going to work. If you've ever read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, basically it discusses that these exact things, that you can't just go to somebody and ask what you want. It very rarely ever works out. So instead, you've got to think about what your coach wants, think about his life, think about what he values, and try to find ways to suggest things. Try to find ways to suggest to read an article here or there or whatever it may be. Don't just go all in and say, hey, we shouldn't meet anymore on the weekends. He's probably going to think you're crazy and not do it. If it's not his idea, more than likely he's not going to do it. You've got to make him believe it's his idea in order for him to change. You've got to drop little hints without it seeming like you're trying to change everything that he's ever done in his life. The other option is to quit. And that's pretty tough. But after spending a lot of time thinking about this question myself, the advice I would give to assistant coach for working for somebody that won't let them respect their values is to not coach for that person. That's the only thing that you can do. And that, to me, is the only way we're going to change our profession and get the right systems and values in place, is to not coach for people that are not willing to help you with your family. But guess what? There's tons of programs out there. You may have to drive a little bit more, or you may have to give it up for a little bit. But I will say, no matter what, that it is not worth your time as a father and a husband or a spouse or whatever it is. It's not worth your time to give it up for coaching. I would, if you love it and it's your passion, I would absolutely advise you to try to find a way. You may want to go down that route. If you absolutely want to stay with it, but your coach won't give you that or won't change, then you may try to approach it in the terms of just helping out here and there. It doesn't hurt to ask. But to me, we're full-time, all of our coaches. But even with us, we do have coaches that miss. We have coaches that miss on a Monday every week, or a coach that misses on a Thursday. But we develop our systems to make that work. So we do tailor our program to make sure that coaches, because I'm the only coach in our program in our school. We do not have another coach that teaches in our building. So, that can be tough, but we work our systems to make sure that's something that can work for everybody. So let me see if I can find another good question. All right. So another one that I got 2 questions on this, and they're both about film study. So the first thing I'll talk about, it says what to focus on for a defensive game plan. And the second one will be breaking it down. So when we're talking about film study and you're talking about defense, now offense, like I said, I watch what their defense does just to get a base idea going into the game. And I do, more than anything, I study their players just to see their tendencies in terms of the little things. And so we absolutely watch film. It's not like I'm saying we don't watch any film. but we don't game plan like traditional way for offense. And for our defense, essentially what they do is each coach is looking for their keys and their tendencies and their reads. And I don't mean tendency in the statistical sense. I mean in terms of if my free safety is supposed to be reading number 2, or he's supposed to be reading the quarterback, or he's reading the guard. We're just trying to find those things he should read within the game. Linebacker coach does that. Defensive line does that. Everybody's trying to figure out what their reads are. We're not sitting there trying to scheme everything they do. You want to make sure your defensive scheme is flexible enough to line up to any formation, because if we don't get lined up and we're not gap sound, then we're in trouble. But you've got to make sure your scheme does that. You don't want to have this scheme that has to look. When I was playing, we had a scheme that was basically we had to see every single formation every week on set rack. We had to draw it up on the board. We had to go over it over and over just to get lined up. Instead of having rules built in, put in a little time in the summer to put your rules in so that you can line up to anything. So you're not scheming every single thing on the weekends for film. And then make sure your communication and your rules on defense allow you to not have to game plan everything. Our communication lets us blitz just about anybody in our program in any gap, in any way, to stunt our linemen in any direction, to have just about anybody do anything. And it all comes down to our communication. So in terms of creating that defensive game plan, find what they do best. So, what are those crazy statistics that stick out on huddle? Stop that. And then just make sure your system is flexible enough to take care of the other things. Do not sit there and game plan for every single thing. It's what everybody does just about, but it's not what I believe is the right way. And the next question, talking about film, was again breaking down film. And that's something I've already discussed, is we use Huddle Assist to help us with that. And then we have a couple other coaches. There's no coach has like a huge job to do in Huddle. Huddle Assist does the majority of it. Then we put in the formation names, which Huddle helps with that also, or can. But we make sure the formation names are right. We make sure their plays are right, and I do that because I run scout teams for our defense. But in terms of breaking it down, those are the things we do. Then we just create the reports and we glance over it. If there's something glaring, we'll study it. If not, we move on. All right. So one of the questions else on here, how many? Let's see. Going through these. How do you bring family into your program? So I'm assuming he's talking about like bring kids to work. Or get wives involved or whatever it may be, spouses. We try to do this at our program. Kids are absolutely welcomed at practice, at anything we're doing, weight room, meals, doesn't matter. My kid, my oldest son, will be 3 next season, and if I'm capable, or if he's capable of handling it, he'll be around us anytime that he needs to be or wants to be. And so are our assistant coaches. Their kids are more than welcome always. And our wives are involved. We have a team dinner during the week for all of our players, and parents are welcome as well. And we have all of our coaching wives, and they bring their kids. We're all together. So we're having a good meal as a staff. And we basically so like a lot of teams do that on a Thursday night. We do ours on a Wednesday night in terms of our meals. But then not only do we have a team dinner, so that's when everybody's involved. We also do something on Thursday nights a lot where we'll go to a restaurant with our coaches, and we don't have to do this. And a lot of times, there'll be a family missing or a coach missing because they got other things to do. But just so that we can continue to share our experiences and be together, we'll go out to a restaurant. The coaches will get a big table, and we'll have all the kids there and all the wives and husbands. So like during the season, Wednesday night and Thursday night, we are all eating together. And that's, I would say that we, it's almost everybody goes each Wednesday and Thursday. When we have a JV game, sometimes that gets in the way of that. But when their season is over, we're always together doing that. Help on the sideline. is another way. So if kids are old enough, if we have wives on our sideline that help out, we have a couple wives that help with water, that help with equipment. So they're down there with us. I know a lot of people think it's, they don't want their wives involved with this and that, but if as long as you're, to me, if your priorities are straight and you include them in everything like this, it works out, and it's much better for your, just again, for that family time. So even when we can't save time and be around our family, we're making sure we are including our family in a lot of the things that we do. All right, let's see. All right. So how can you possibly get prepared for the week without meeting? That's something that I've gotten from a lot of coaches in the past, but so how can you, let's say Monday comes. For one, we also move our first practice back to Tuesday, so that gives us another day for preparation. So it stops that crunch on Saturday and Sunday to get things done. I don't even have. I'm the offensive coordinator, and I don't even have my offensive game plan really. Well, like I said, it's not a true game plan, but I don't even have like practice ready or thoughts together until Wednesday of the week. So first off, we delay things by doing that. Secondly, we design all our schemes to not need that much time on the weekends. But we also we do use some Google Docs. We use a sheet that everybody fills in. Well, it depends on what the defense coordinator wants or offense coordinator wants. But so when people are watching film, they'll have their things that they're looking at to save time. So I never sit down to watch film and watch every little thing. I'll open up the document, and the O-line coach, I'll look at his, and he'll tell me the best lineman, the worst lineman. Do we need to protect anybody on our line? What will our best run be? Same thing for secondary, linebackers, everything. So it's not like I have to go in there. This is delegation. This is what we have to do in order to get those thoughts out. All right. So next thing, how can I learn more about productivity? That was the first step that I discussed in this. So what can you do? I kind of mentioned those things, but it's about finding the best things that I will always mention is finding books. The books that I mentioned today are all about productivity. Peter Drucker is kind of the father of productivity in the corporate world, and he's a great guy to look at. And you can find some of his stuff just as PDFs because they're a lot older, some of his articles, without having to get a book. But there's blogs, and obviously you can go to blogs and read stuff. I don't always say, look at, blogs. The thing about blogs and articles online is that they're only surface deep. A lot of those things aren't very detailed, so it's hard to learn from those. It just kind of gives you the thought process, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. So that can be tough. Let's see. Then let's see. Another coach earlier tonight asked, what about creating an offensive play script? So I think right now this is our last question. So if you have another question, make sure to get it in because we're going to wrap it up after this. But the coach asked, what about creating an offensive script takes him the majority of his time? And he's not going to like my answer because I don't create an offensive script anymore. Our system is developed so that it's not script intense. Again, like I said earlier, we're trying to create the best game plan during the game. So we're just reading the defense and trying to find out what works for us. We're not trying to say, I'll go into a game with thoughts, right? We all do that, and I'll write those things down, but it's not something that takes me more than a few minutes. And I usually do these on Friday morning or Thursday at some time, but I don't really I don't create a script anymore. It's something I used to do. I used to have 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, left hash, right hash, shots, 2-point conversions, screens, all that stuff. And now we just build our system so that it's not intensive. All right. So that build, measure, learn. Somebody had a question right there discussing, and if you're watching, you see this loop here on build, measure, learn. We really, that's kind of how we game plan, really. And then when you're reading this book, it'll tell you about this. So basically what we do is we build a play, right? So we have a play that we think is going to be successful, and then we're going to measure that play every time we call it. So if like we're running power, we're measuring it each time. And how we measure it is each coach looks at something. So we're looking at the defensive end that we're kicking out. We're looking at the safety rolling down. We're looking and we're learning. So if power is working, we're going to persevere. We're going to stick with power. But if power is not working, we're going to find a way to adjust to that, whether it's a play action, an RPO, a counter, option, something to change. So we do that with all of our base stuff. That's how we approach it. We don't game plan per se. We think of hypotheses in our head, what's going to work, and then we just we build that throughout the practice week, and then we just measure it and test it, which is analyzing throughout the game to see what we're going to go to next. All right, so that was a pretty long webinar. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know some of the thoughts were pretty pushy. I get that, but this is something I'm really passionate about and thought it needed to be said. If you liked it, I highly encourage you to please share this with other people. Share it with other coaches. If you have any questions, you can tweet me here on Twitter. You can go to our website, coachtribe.com, and contact us on there as well. Thank you for participating.